Hello everyone and welcome to an industrious new episode of the StudioMEcast. I'm your host, Peter, joining you from StudioME's Speakeasy once again, and if you like the look and sound of this podcast, then you can book it yourself at StudioME.me for your first or next episode. Today, as always, I'm joined by a special guest. This is Lindsay Fleuriet, who is the creative director of Post-Industrial. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, creative director, Post-Industrial, for people who just tuning in for us here, can you give us just the breakdown on what is Post-Industrial, what's it all about, and what's your role as creative director?
Well, Post-Industrial is a multimedia company that produces stories in video, words, and events. We tell stories about communities that were once industrial and manufacturing centers, communities in America, communities all around the world that have seen their industry and their manufacturing leave from the areas where they grew up, and I'm one of those people. I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. So my job as creative director is to curate and help tell those stories in the best possible way.
That's fantastic. Now, I understand you have a background in production design for films, and we'll get into that in a bit. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of what you do now for Post-Industrial is has a lot to do with managing the social media side of things, correct?
Yeah.
How has and that's a relatively new experience for you, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
What has that been like diving into this?
Well, my background is in film and feature film and large format video. So moving to a much smaller screen in a smaller studio environment has been a great experience. It's been fast moving. It's been every day just trying to post content that is going to resonate with our audience and inspire them and really just captivate our audience. So it's constantly tweaking things. Mm-hmm. You post a video and you look at it and you think, okay, well, what can I do? What can I do for the next day? Because we're posting content on a daily basis. And, I'm just trying to every day improve the process, whether it be, changing the frame or brightening the image or, just really making every day better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there's a lot of journalism is a huge part of Post-Industrial. Is it fair to say that your background, though, is primarily based in the arts?
Yes.
How did you first get into the arts?
Well, I'm not going to start all the way back from the very beginning, but because that would be quite a while ago. Mm-hmm. But I began making home videos with my friends, and that's where my love of film really, I think, really was solidified at a young age. I was the talent in the film, and I was mostly the creative director then too. So I feel like I've played many different roles in the creative space. I lived in New York City for 5 years, and cool. I had a costume design business with my sister. So that's really where I cut my teeth in the film world. We partnered with film students, with bands. a variety of different experiences, but we made a couple of short independent films. And from there, I had the opportunity to partner with my friends and creative film colleagues back in Youngstown, Ohio. And that's most recently, within the past several years, I made 2 feature films.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we get into those right now then? So for the 2 feature films, what's the title of the first one?
Well, the title of the first one is called The Housekeeper, and that's starring Denise Richards. It was filmed in, like I said, Youngstown, Ohio. And Youngstown, Ohio is a wonderful place to film because it really is a post-industrial landscape that oftentimes is not shown in movies that movies that are coming out of Hollywood. This is a smaller budget film, but produced in an area that has tremendous opportunity in terms of the landscape and what the areas that that are considered post-industrial America have to offer.
Fantastic. And I believe that film can be found on Tubi?
Yes, it can.
Well, we'll have a link to that in the description below, everybody, as well as a few other goodies, as always. So we'll make sure to check that out, won't you? Thank you. Now, doing that production, this was your first feature film,
Yes,
correct?
it was.
So, having done independent shorts and working with bands, this wide home videos in your hometown, doing home videos in your hometown and then coming back to your hometown to do a feature film. Was that a surreal experience for you?
Yes.
What was that like?
Yeah, it was, absolutely. After living in New York, I thought, well, maybe I'll make my first feature film in New York. But, the stars were aligned, and so it happened in Youngstown. It was a great experience having the opportunity to collaborate with friends that had lived most of whom had moved away from the area, and they pursued their creative endeavors elsewhere in other cities, other states. But it was great for all of us to come back together, and kind of get together for a couple of weeks and do it all over again. That
has to be such a cool homecoming experience, like to, be doing, just home videos in your hometown with your friends and coming back together to do a feature. That's, how many people get to do that?
Yeah, it was really incredible. And the director of Find Them is one of my nearest and dearest friends, Melanie Clark Pinella. She actually won Best Director for the film in Youngstown's film festival.
Oh, congratulations!
So yeah, it was the first feature film that she directed, and she hit it out of the park.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So for this first film that you did, what were your roles on the project?
Well, for The Housekeeper, my role was both of the films, they were production designer. But I wanted to tell you something, and I think I mentioned something earlier about this, is that, production designer is, I didn't realize at the time, but, is a great position to have. And it's sort of a cherry on the top position, as a production designer mentor shared with me. I spoke to him on the phone, and he said, "Oh, well, what a wonderful, wonderful role to have as production designer." And being green as a production designer, a bit green, because I had worked in different roles throughout my throughout my years in film. Like I said, I was a costume designer. I've also done set design. I've had a lot of, different positions, but I feel like where I am right now as creative director, being a production designer and being an art director has led me to this very place. Not having to always be thinking about making a feature film, because I think it's easy to get stuck in that particular place where you make a feature film, or you make a great film and you think, okay, well, now this is where I have to be, or now this is who I am. But I think that if you are open to different opportunities and open to growth, then you don't necessarily pigeonhole yourself as a person who would only work in this one environment. I felt that way as a costume designer in New York. I didn't have the intention of just being a costume designer, but I made a couple costumes, and it's like, well, okay, well, I'm a costume designer now, and those are the roles that I was going for. So I think that, pardon me.
No, that's a fascinating perspective to have, where you say these things help inform and lead you into the next position, but it's whatever it is, such as being a production designer, isn't the end-all, be-all idea for you. Is there, I guess, do you have an idea of like an overall title that you like that is sort of a guide for what you, is it artist? Is it like, do you have, is there here's the question, is there a connected theme, an ongoing connection between these positions that have made them appealing to you? What do they have in common?
I think about that often, and it's always a creative thread, a creative, floss that just keeps that has held everything together in a variety of different environments. One of my first jobs was working at a direct mail printing and advertising company. And I worked very closely with graphic artists, although I was on like the communications sort of customer service end of the creative space that I was in. I was working directly, alongside of the graphic artists, and so I picked up on a lot of that lingo, and that broadened my perspective in digital design. And I still envy graphic artists who have that skill, because I never, I didn't pursue it. That's not my, that wasn't the path that I chose or the road that I spent the most time on, but I really do admire it. So, working alongside of the graphic artist taught me so much, and moving on to other positions that I've had as a creative producer in the fashion industry. I previously worked for Estee Lauder and MAC Cosmetics and Tommy Hilfiger on their creative teams. So being in these environments, and not necessarily, I have always been the thread. Being the producer, you're working in between departments, as that person, as that liaison. So I find that, the common thread is sort of me, because I've been a go-to or a go-between person for a lot of my career.
Right.
So the thread is always like the creative side. I would never consider working in an environment that didn't allow that creativity, or at least to be, surrounded by that.
Right.
And that's always what I seek. And those are the projects that projects and people and environments that I look for.
That's really cool. So when you do these, it sounds like you're not always thinking about the next thing, like like you're not necessarily trying to like go to a specific point, like oh, I'm going to do this next, but you also say like you don't want to view what you're doing in that moment as the end all be all. This is what I do forever now. Would you? I mean, it sounds like you're more of a journey instead of the destination-focused kind of person.
Yeah.
Have you enjoyed most of these different creative endeavors that you've been on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every ride has its ups and its and its downs. And they were also through different times in my life. So in my early 20s, mid 20s, to my early 30s, I lived in San Diego on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. So, there was time and place and, age really means so much when you're looking back on your history and thinking, what was, did you enjoy it? Was it, beneficial? Did it help, in your, in your future? Yeah, absolutely. I wish I would have made some different choices. But everything led me to where I am today.
Well, with those moments where you looking back, you wish you made some different choices. Did those experiences inform choices that you made later on as well, like as a learning of that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. From San Diego, I moved to New York City, and I had always wanted to collaborate creatively with my sister, and she was there. And she had already established herself, so it was kind of like it was an easy transition for me, which seems strange to say, coming from one coast to the other, but it's always easier when you know somebody in a new place, and that was her. And she had already been there for about 5 years or so. So when I moved there, I just slid right into her friend group. It was great. And not everybody has this story, but we got work pretty quickly because she was already, established as a creative person, and found her creative network that, that became my network. And then we developed our network together as a creative duo. So the opportunities grew for us, and we really had such a great time working together.
That's phenomenal. It's great to have that kind of social familial base, community, and having that, and also knowing that so much of your work with post-industrial is about highlighting these post-industrial communities.
Yes.
It seems obvious to me that you're able to identify with communities the communities that are represented in post-industrial largely because of your own experience, including being from Youngstown, Ohio, like you mentioned. So if we've got this first feature we've talked about, link in the description, everybody. But you said there was a second feature. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the second feature is called Find Them, and I would like to note that both of them are thrillers. Find Them is a bit more thrilling, but a bit scarier than The Housekeeper. Well, I mean, who am I to say? That's what I think. That's just my opinion.
Right.
But Find Them is a story about teenagers who get lost in the woods, and they find an abandoned house, and there's an organ involved with some creepy organ music. I mean, organ music always sounds, creepy. You know the sound that I'm right. Thinking of. Yeah. So the story involved is centered around these teenagers that find this abandoned house. There's creepy organ music. There are some other scary things. I particularly really enjoy doing art direction and production design for horror and thriller films. I just really enjoy it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, like that. Well, that's great you say that, because something I like to ask people is, what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite genre to work in?
Yeah.
And knowing that thriller is near and dear to your heart for the work that you enjoy, is the kind of work that you like to do, does that reflect the types of films you like to watch as well?
I would say so. However, I am very scared of horror films. I like them. I like them, but I still at I have to watch them like this.
I had a late introduction to horror because my family didn't really watch horror movies that much because they're scary. And
they are scary.
There were a few that I saw when I was younger, and some of them weren't even maybe technically horror movies so much as had horror elements. A lot of people might know the animated film Watership Down, which haunted me as a kid, but has since become one of my favorite movies, and also one of the most underrated scores ever. I listen to it almost every day at this point, like on the way to work, I'll be,
Peter.
It's beautiful music, but the I actually, most of my horror education has come from a good friend of mine, Connor McNellis. He's been on the show before, and for a while there were a few films we watched where at first I'm like, all right, we're gonna lights on, talk during it, but eventually getting to that point of watching a scary movie and trying to help the movie work, because it's kind of self-sabotaging for the medicine of cinema if you're not buying into what you're watching. It's like nothing's more boorish than going to a movie theater to see a horror film, enjoying it, and then as you're leaving, some person's just like, I didn't think it was scary. It's like, yeah, well, it's fake. Like it's easy to not get scared if you don't want to get scared. But you got to buy into the film. Some movies you can't get into, I get it. But, there is that audience participation in order for it's one of those weird things where it's an example of like magic is real when you believe it's real in a way, for me, for those types of movies anyway. Do you get to go to the movies a lot these days?
I don't really get to go to the movies a lot. One of the last movies that I saw in the theater, I mean, I'm just going to bring this up many years ago. It was from many years ago, and I'm going to bring it up because it was just like the most fascinating movie experience that I've ever had. Not because it was, something new or something, that I hadn't seen before, but because it was The Shining, and it was Halloween, and I saw it in New York. And there was just something about that film. I had never seen it before in the theater. But, there's something eerie about it being around Halloween and The Shining. I actually went to Mount Hood, where The Shining was filmed in Oregon.
Oh wow!
Yeah, parts of the scene, parts of the film were filmed there, and so that's a side anecdote.
That's so cool. To go to it's so awesome to like go to a place where something was filmed or see an artifact. Like I got to see the Ark of the Covenant from Indiana Jones.
Oh, wow.
It's an amazing exhibit that my dad surprised me with. He's like, get in the car, and we went to this traveling exhibit at the Carnegie Science Center, which they had this traveling exhibit about filmmaking with all these crazy artifacts of like the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail. They had some miniatures from Star Wars and all kinds of the hat that Steven Spielberg wore when he was making E.T., all kinds of crazy things. But I love going near the studio, I believe, is the church that's in the movie Dogma, right?
Yeah.
Which I realized that it's right over there. So sometime I'm going to go on lunch and just walk over and
Yeah, it's a historic landmark.
Yeah, but going to see where The Shining was shot, like, what was that experience like? Were you going there because it was shot there, or did you have
No,
other...
I wasn't. My brother was living there at the time. My brother was living in Portland, and the name is escaping me right now. I'm sure anybody that watches this is going to, put in the comments, it was this place. But there are parts of The Shining that were filmed in Colorado, I believe in Rocky Mountain National Park, and then there were parts of The Shining that were filmed on Mount Hood in Oregon.
Wow,
yeah.
That's so cool. That's was that like where the hotel was?
Yeah, where the hotel.
Did you get to go in?
Yeah,
and all?
yeah. We went in. We stood by the fireplace, giant like rock fireplace. That was cool, and it was a family trip. So I was living in San Diego at the time,
just like The Shining was.
Yeah, I know. So I was living in San Diego at the time, and my brother was living in Portland. My sister flew out from New York, and my parents flew out from Ohio, and we drove up the mountain. It was something that my brother wanted to show us.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
What an awesome experience to see the sights.
Yeah,
It's a timeless film that everybody still is all over.
Yeah. Well, and I was trying to figure out, because people had told me, well, not all of it was filmed there. So I'm like, okay, well, trying to figure out what parts were filmed in Colorado, what parts were filmed in Oregon. A lot of it is very familiar.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it was cool.
That's true for like every movie, though. It's like the inside of Edoras in Lord of the Rings is different than the exterior. It's completely different, places, timing, all that. But that's rad. Were there, taking it back to the films you've worked on so far, are there any, I would ask, when, as production designer for these, when you're going through the script, are you working with in those experiences, were you working with the director where they're giving more direction at the outset, or are you going through the script and then you present ideas and work together? Can you tell me a bit about what the creative process for that was like?
Well, what I like to do is try and nail most things down in pre-production, if there's time. Depending upon what your schedule is like. Some people are just moving from like film to film to film. Other people haven't worked on a film in a while. You're working with all different all different levels, which I think is really, really interesting and one of the best aspects. But getting back to the process, I like to really nail things down in pre-production when we are on those pre-production calls, or if we're doing scouting. I use those opportunities to really get with the director and say, okay, if there were things that I didn't understand, what do you think about this? Or did I understand you correctly here? I really like to line up all of those options so that when you are with a director, depending upon the relationship you have with your director, you really want to have a great one, but, that's not always the possibility. Preparation is really key to ensuring a smooth process. There as best you can, because anything can happen. Anything can happen when you're on set. But if you have those processes that are sort of lined up, one of the first things that I do when I'm if I'm working as production designer and set decorator, because oftentimes on smaller budget films you are doing those things, is taking masking tape and just using that as a great resource to separate things,
Right.
using different colored tape, or just really bringing it down, bringing your process to keeping it simple, so that so that it's easier for you, it's easier for everybody else that you're working with, so that things can move smoothly.
Now, you've lived in a bunch of different cultures, honestly, where you've Youngstown, Ohio, but also West Coast culture, East Coast culture, and just to name what you've mentioned so far. All right, living in these different places, has that, I guess the question I have is, has that given you, I guess, a more enriched view of, we'll just focus on the United States, right? Has that, what has it been like living in all these different places in the country?
Well, it's definitely broadened my perspective, and it's made me really sensitive to other people and the way that they were brought up, their cultures, their life experiences, because depending upon where you grew up, that experience is going to be different, and sometimes completely different from somebody that grew up in another region. On the West Coast, for example, I know you said you just wanted to talk about the U.S., but
we can expand it. Take it where you want.
I will say that one of the best experiences that gave me such an interesting perspective on the world is being a foreign exchange student when I was a teenager.
Wow.
I was a Rotary exchange student in France. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I was put into a community that was it was a post-industrial community.
In France?
In France,
huh.
Yes. It was in the Loire Valley. It was called Gien, and spelled Gien, and they were well known for their ceramic ware and pottery. That was a big industry for the community for several hundred years.
Oh, wow.
So I at the time I didn't realize this at all. I just thought, why am I in a French town that looks exactly like the one that I grew up in?
Yeah.
And it was to me it was a bit boring. But the experience was amazing, and I learned so much, and I would always encourage anybody to go live elsewhere, or whether it be even in another state. It doesn't have to be in another country, because living in another state sometimes is like living in another country. For me, living in California was like that. So I think these experiences have definitely informed my the way that I create, the way that my mind organizes things. It's that living in all of these different places have definitely shaped that.
That's fantastic. I got to go to France in 2022 for the Cannes Film Festival. Now, you've been to a lot of places. Is there anywhere that you've that you want to travel to that you haven't had the opportunity yet?
Well, there are many places. I always want to travel to all the places that I have never been. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Sarajevo, to the Sarajevo Film Fest.
Cool.
And although I didn't get to watch any films,
sometimes that's how it works out.
Yeah, sometimes that's just how it works out. My stepdaughter Francesca was with us, and so this was a family vacation, and we just kind of like couldn't get away to watch any films. But just being there, just being in a film festival environment, I'm sure you can attest to this, is just that the buzz of that and the creativity that is that is really palpable.
It's a thrill.
Yeah.
Film is such like so many art forms, is a universal language, and when you're meeting with a lot of people to just celebrate cinema, and maybe like I'm, at a bar with someone who they don't speak English, I don't speak their language, but we both have a little bit of a second language, and are just frantically like geeking out about like what we just saw or what our experiences have been. It's like immediately, it's weird how when you have this understanding of another art form, even if your like literal like verbal language isn't in common, you're still able to connect with people on such a like genuine, sincere, and deep level that I love it. I just love movies, like, and but that's so cool to be there for like Sarajevo and all that. Now, something else that you talked about before we began our recording is a film collective.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So myself and Melanie Clark-Pinella, who I'd mentioned earlier, a dear friend of mine and the director of Find Them, as well as Cindy Castro DeRusso, who is a producer on our films. There are others. I could go down the list and mention them, Alicia Samra and others, Charlene Barb, giving a few shout outs.
Good.
This is really part of the creative group of women. I'm not going to say that we're not trying to discriminate, but we just happen to be women that have formed this group. And we really support one another. We support all of one another's creative endeavors, and we really just work so hard. We're very passionate about the art that we've made, and then the plans that we have coming up for some new projects. I'm not going to give the details away just yet, but there are some things. There are some things in the works that we have coming up for 2024 and 2025.
Wonderful. So this film collective, I apologize if you did mention it just now, but is there a name for?
No, but we should get one.
Yeah. The naming things is fun, You get a production company, an LLC, or a club, or a band of misfits, or a ragtag team of commandos going into whatever. Yeah. That's awesome. No, it's so cool to have just a supportive group of fellow artists and industrious people who can come together for a common goal to make film. It's great that you've got stuff coming up as well. Something that I'd like to ask you, though, because we've talked about you being a creative director, production designer, working alongside graphic artists, doing wardrobe and costume. Have you thought about, I don't know if this has any interest for you or not, but have you thought about directing?
I haven't.
Yeah.
Peter, this just threw me off. Mm-hmm. Well, as the creative director, I've always been, I almost, in a way, I feel like I've always been the director, because I have the vision. I'm able to. This question's tough for me.
Well, let me form it another way, because you're the creative director for Post Industrial. Yeah. You've done all these different things. In the event, which I'm not sure if you've alluded to or not, but in the event that you return to feature filmmaking, specifically for feature film directing, is that anything that might hold any interest for you?
It definitely would.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Are you well, let me follow up again. Do you write? Screenplays, I mean.
Screenplays. Yeah. No, I haven't written a screenplay, but I'm constantly, I have a group thread, text thread with my creative community, and we're constantly throwing around ideas, we should do this, let's get together for this. And I mean, just for all of us to get together and do that, it is sort of like, it is sort of like making another film, whatever it is, because the stars have to align to get
Right.
with everybody's schedules to get people together. I do spend half of the year in Croatia, so I'm going back and forth a lot. So that's.
Is Croatia, is that work related or?
So my stepdaughter, Francesca, lives in Croatia. She lives in Zagreb. So my husband and I, Carmen, who is the founder of Post Industrial, we are there every 3 months. It's not easy, but it is a fascinating and, exciting life, going from truly one culture to another culture, dipping back, and it's mostly always post-industrial America. It is always this region. This coming Friday, this weekend, we're going to Indianapolis. We're going to visit an arts and cultural center there for their First Friday event.
Wow.
So we're really looking forward to that, and speaking with people in Indianapolis, and learning what people from Indianapolis are like. I mean, frankly, I don't know. I've never been there before. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, there's like 1 million people that live in Indianapolis. I mean, who knew? I didn't know. So, having the opportunity to, capture that environment on film, on an iPhone, with lav set up and doing a short show like that, then this is, kind of like circling back to what we first started talking about, was going from feature films to different types of content creation. Sometimes I'm the talent, and, I'm the one in front of the camera, as because a lot of times I'm not that person. I'm on the technical side. So when you go into this film world, whatever you think, you kind of think that you're getting into.
Right.
I don't know. It's that's why sometimes it is difficult to answer. Like, well, what is your role? Well, it's like it always kind of changes.
Yeah.
So I'm answering that question. I'm answering that question differently depending upon where I am.
Yeah, I like what you said before, that, and you expounded on like the content, like the thread going through everything is like creativity, but he's basically said like the thing is me. I'm the thing that is going through all this, which I think is a cool way of phrasing it and thinking about it, and it's really cool to hear about your outlook on just the different roles that you've had on different projects and how they've led you into different roles and types of work and ways that you approach them, and some things that you might go back to occasionally as well. I think I'd like to sort of start to wrap up here with a couple more questions about, is there something that in the creative world that you get a lot out of, whether it's enrichment to the soul or humor, or like just mental health break, whatever it is there a creative outlet that, as an audience member or someone who receives it, that you don't personally do? Like my example is like, I mean, not that I can't do something on a dance floor, but I'm not like a dancer, right? But like seeing people who have spent their whole life doing ballet or anything like that, just it just blows me away all the time. It inspires me endlessly. I have nothing to do with it, but I get a lot out of it. Is there a creative art form or anything that you don't personally do, but you get a lot out of?
Yeah, there is. I would say the art of cooking. I'm not a good cook. I really want to be. I do. I really admire those that can cook and that can prepare. I can do it. I have. I enjoy it from time to time, but it's not. It's just something that I just that art form is not there for me. I do try and dance. I love to hula hoop.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Excellent. That's wonderful.
I even won a contest.
Really?
Once.
Congratulations!
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've had a few friends who are professional hoopers. I think that's what they call themselves. Sorry, it's been a while, guys. Say hi. Anyway, but a hula hoop competition. We have someone who walks past the studio during the summer. There's the people who pass the studio on a regular basis, and I guess we just give them names. Like there's beatbox guy, there's hula hoop girl. There's a few people who keep going back and forth, but yeah. So you want a hula hoop competition?
Oh, won a hula hoop competition. Yeah, I wish that one was filmed. I feel like I have a lot of these little hidden talents, or what some people like to call maybe soft sports like. Cornhole or what other things? I'm terrible at that. I'm not so good at that either. Although I used to be on a cornhole. I was on a cornhole league. But just showing up after work, that got kind of difficult. It was in New York, so those high stress days, right. And then I guess at a point there were times where it was like a stress release. Yeah. So that was good for me at the time. But ping pong, I really
very cool.
Or table tennis, that is a great stress relief for me. Actually using like two paddles like this and kind of just going back and forth. Stuff. Yeah.
Uh-huh. That's great. I like to think that at some point I was all right at ping pong, table tennis, but maybe those are just, exaggerated youth group days. I don't know. But for me, cornhole, I don't know why I'm so bad at it. Like, I'm better at throwing tomahawks than sandbags for some reason. That doesn't make any sense to me, personally, but, that's fantastic. So, asked about some art forms that I think the cooking is such an interesting answer, because it's like I get it with that one too. Like, do you like watching cooking shows, like reality?
Do. Yeah, I do. I really like it. And some people would say, cooking's more of a craft. And some people say that also about journalism. It's a craft. And who decides? I mean, I guess it's up for debate, but I wouldn't debate it, because for me it's an art form.
Right. Yeah, I think it would be pretty hard to argue that there's no art involved with the culinary arts at all ever. It's like, even if you're just talking about arranging it, it's like there's plenty of opportunity for it that happens. So but yeah, that's now. So that was something that you get a lot out of, that you don't personally pursue as your own art form, primary art form, I guess you might say. Last question, then. There's been so many things that you've done. You've lived in so many cool places. You've had all these experiences. You've fulfilled all these roles and worked with all kinds of people, and you're always doing new things. It sounds like, too, just like with this Indianapolis. Is there something that you've had a mind to do, an interest in, that you want to try someday? That, like, maybe you don't even have plans for when that's gonna be. I've got stuff like, it would be cool someday to, I've got a billion things that I'm not even close to doing that I want to do. But is there something that comes to mind that that you really want to dive into at some point, but you've never done it?
I have wanted to get my motorcycle license since I'm 44 now. Since I turned 35, I said, I'm getting my motorcycle license this year. because my husband has his license and he's had it for many years, and we've gone on trips together. And one that we wrote a story about is when we went to West Virginia. We borrowed a Ural motorcycle. It's a Russian bike with a sidecar, and I rode in the sidecar.
Nice.
That was really a death-defying trip.
Yeah,
I mean, not because my husband isn't a good driver. He's a great driver, honey. I love you. But because it was cold, because it was in West Virginia, because of American roads, they're not the greatest. Lots of potholes.
It's true. I see my previous comment. I totally agree, though. It's embarrassing. I don't.
We did this. We did it in November. We did this in November, beginning of November, but still, freezing. Mm-hmm. So. Wow. I would really like to get my motorcycle license. I want to do some filming on a motorcycle.
Like a GoPro?
Yeah, something.
Cool.
I mean, just, this is something that I think is important because who knows when I'm going to need to know how to ride a motorcycle. Right. Actually not just be a passenger, but ride it, depending upon where I am in the world. Mm-hmm. My first motorcycle was a Suzuki 50cc, and my dad bought it for the family. There were 3 of us, 3 kids, so that was my first vehicle, and I never really graduated from that. I could sit on that motorcycle right now and kind of look like a little clown motorcycle, but I have bigger ones in mind.
Cool. Is there a particular bike that if you could have any bike ever, do you have a dream motorcycle?
A dream motorcycle? Yeah. Well, I've always been a Triumph girl because my dad has Triumph motorcycles, and he's always had them. He has a 67 Bonneville that he rebuilds and a newer one. And my husband's going to be getting a Triumph. He's got his mind set on a Scrambler, so I feel like a Triumph is going to be mine as well.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you get your motorcycle license this year.
Yes.
And but thank you so much for being my guest. This has been such a cool conversation. I loved it. And everybody, the links to those films and also Post Industrial, you can look up more on that, and Post Industrial's YouTube channel as well. There's going to be in the description. Lindsay, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today. It's been wonderful.
Thanks so much for having me, Peter. It's been great.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, if you're the kind of person who subscribes, don't forget to do that. But whether that's the case or not, I hope we see you again because we'll be here. Bye-bye. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to start your own podcast, why wait? Reach out to us at StudioME.me, and I hope you hear me again soon.